Yeah, I am as well, of course. They're kind of like the two parallels, polar opposites you see in the VGC. Greece is a team that's, not very been known but has popped off recently, whereas Portugal is one of the teams that has been known, for a long, long while through players such as Eduardo Cunha, but has been showing such good display with Edu getting that win in the regional championships recently, and they have such good runs these World Cups. I think they always just fall short of that next stage, if not, do very, very well. But of course, things that go very, very well, of course, everyone's favourite Dondozo and Tatsugiri, being led by Lazaros Lazaropoulos, which is an amazing, amazing player. EUIC 6-3, Beanie Brawl, top 4, top 16 at the Open, so has a good knowledge of these different formats, and then 2 times World Cup competitor, so it has their roots, has those definite strong points in these styles of tournaments, and can flex around everywhere, such as again flexing with teams like the Dondozo teams, which are very, very flexible, because you can go Dondozo Tatsugiri, you can go for other modes, or you could just bring a mix and match and then hopefully get the most out of it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting to see how Lazarus chooses to pilot this team. There's so much potential for slowing down the game with the Toxic Debris ability, with Aurora Veil, but also a lot of offense with that Ogerpon, and with those wave crashes from the Dondozo. I think it'll be interesting to see. Portugal's a tough team to take down, but this is the sort of team that can absolutely catch someone unprepared, and Lazarus definitely has the qualifications to play this super well, even if his opponent is very well prepared. So I'm excited to see how this plays out.
It's going to be very, very exciting to see, because it's one of those things, every player has their Dozo matchup. One thing I did speak about today, whilst I was at Lille, was every player may have their Dondozo matchup in the back of their mind, but it's one of those things where you can either under prep for it because you think, oh, it's Dozo, I can deal with it, I can haze it, I can clear smog it, I can crit it, I can hit it on its weaker special side, or it's something that you prep too much for, and then you kind of be like, oh, I haven't seen the Dozo, or oh, my Dozo matchup wasn't as good as I thought it was, and then you have to kind of pick up the pieces for the other 4 Pokemon, where Dondozo just had that scare tactic, that hate tactic, and when we see a team like we do from Laz, we see that very strong Ogerpon, we see Glamora, which can be very detrimental to opposing Dondozos, or it can be very detrimental, in making sure Dondozo can kill things a lot quicker. And then we have the Iron Hands, which is everyone's favourite buddy, over 50% usage, it's just knocking things out, stopping things from attacking, and just being very, very annoying for things like Flutter Mane and other fragile physical Pokemon.
So a lot of options from Lazarus. Let's take a quick look at what Diogo will be bringing against this. So first off, though, Diogo, quite a qualified player. Bilbao Special Event Top 32, a shuffled regional finalist in the Seniors Division back in 2018, a top 16 at EUIC in 2017, and a 2 times World Cup of VGC competitor, alongside the likes, as we mentioned, of some incredible players in Portugal. He's bringing a fairly straightforward team, but I really like the balance on it, and it's going to be interesting to see how that matches up against the Dondozo.
It is going to be very, very interesting to see how it matches up, because, as you said, about Dondozo being one of those bulky teams, this is also one of those bulkier teams, also a standard sort of covered bulky team. You have Flutter Mane and Landorus, which are very, very strong. Heatran, which is in the middle, which is, super strong, but also super bulky, and it wants to be. And then you just, pick up the pieces. Iron Hands there, again, just showing why it's that 50% usage. It can just slot itself onto any team. It's got Fake Out, it can have Volt Switch, it can do anything and everything you want it to do. Ogerpon is one of those new toys that everyone is loving to see. You want to fill a slot, you need a Water type, you need a Fire type, you also need a Grass type. Ogerpon is there, and this fits very, very well into this team, making that Fire, Water, Grass core in just 2 Pokemon, saving Diogo lots and lots of space, but also giving them a very, very, bulky sort of Pokemon there, with Horn Leech, Follow Me, and Spiky Shield. That thing is staying around for a long time, if not helping its teammates to stay around for just as long.
It always makes me happy to see Ogerpon in the team builder, especially next to Heatran. It's all the types you want, Fire, Water, Grass, Steel. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's got a lot of staying power, a lot of redirection. Horn Leech into Dondozo probably heals a lot of hit points if you're able to get past that defense stat. But it's going to be interesting to see, amidst even all of these Pokemon, there's a lot of bulk from Diogo's side, and some offense. But I'm not sure what the options are for handling that Ninetales before it's able to set up Aurora Veil from Lazarus' side of the field. So there could be quite a bit of bulk that Diego's going to have to find a way to push through, which is a bit dangerous if you're staring down a Dondozo that has access to things like Order Up to be able to sort of be a constantly escalating threat.
That is going to be something that you are going to deal with Iron Hands can be that fake out that can be the Fawn in the side of Dondozo. Fluttermane being choice specs, just having those strong moves alongside strong special attacks that could possibly be that tool that is there, just making sure Dondozo is hit hard and fast before it can do anything, if not even after those boosts. I've seen some Fluttermane do about 25% to a Dondozo, even when it's at that +2. Heatran can maybe Terra Grass, put a little bit of a dent in it as well, start just going for those Earth Powers, hoping for that special defense drop. Same with Ogerpon being that water absorbability, it is just going to be able to stop it in its tracks there. But as you said, we have got that Ninetales, which will be 4 times effective against that Ogerpon. If it does carry that Freeze Dry, I will just double check. It does not carry Freeze Dry, it's actually a Blizzard version, so Ogerpon is quite safe in front of the Ninetales as well. So there's a few things going to annoy a bit, like Landorus, and you can still freeze, you can still set up that Aurora Veil. So it's just, both these players have something to go into one another, and it's just going to be nice to see who comes out on top in this war of I have a tool, you have a tool, everyone has a tool. We're talking about things coming up. Let's see these two leads with the Ninetales coming out straight away alongside the Ogerpon, as well as the Fluttermane plus the Iron Hands, so a supportive Pokemon and defensive Pokemon for both players on this turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think both players kind of trying to look for that strong defensive option and the strong offensive option right off the bat in the lead. I really like this Ninetales Ogerpon, and I'm curious what Diogo's answer to it is going to be, because there's just so much damage that can come out from this Ogerpon, and Fluttermane can threaten a lot of Pokemon, but Ogerpon in particular is one that I might struggle with a bit, especially because if you focus too much on that, there's the Aurora Veil threat as well. But definitely Diogo bringing a lot of Pokemon that can do a lot of damage into a number of Pokemon. If that Ninetales sets up the Aurora Veil, it's still going to have to take a heavy slam for its troubles.
It is able to take a heavy slam, and that is something being 4 times effective is horrible to see. And whereas that light play variant that players are really going towards, it is going to be taking the hit with no remorse whatsoever. Protect is the option though, just to make sure that it isn't getting faked out, isn't getting hit by those heavy slams. Fake out does go into it, meaning that Veil is going up a turn later, but yeah, it still is sticking around. Shadow Ball comes out and goes to that slot as well. So we do see Diogo really want to get rid of that Ninetales, knowing that it's pivotal in making sure that Dondozo is even bulkier. As we see the Ivy Sigil Fire type coming on out, doesn't get the Fluttermane, which shows this is a bulkier Fluttermane than normal, which is another thing players are leaning towards, because you've got to make sure your Fluttermane can stay around for as long as possible, so that it isn't dropping and you can just throw out damage left, right and center with how much this Fluttermane can put out on a good day.
That bulk really coming into play with the Fluttermane, but the read very much counteracting that. With that Protect on the Ninetales, spectacular. If it hadn't protected, then that Fluttermane would have been able to finish off the Ninetales with a couple of Shadow Balls before Aurora Veil could go up. But that one prediction, and then the Ivy Cudgel, even though it's not a knockout, this Fluttermane can't attack the Ninetales enough times before Ninetales is able to go for that Aurora Veil. So a nice way for Lazaros to make sure that that Aurora Veil is coming up. Diogo's going to have to go back to the drawing board to figure out how to stop that from happening.
Diogo is going to have to go out to that drawing board, and it's one of those things that you can quite easily work around, knowing a player. So okay, they went for that Protect on that fake out turn 1, game 1. Are they going to fall for the same thing game 2, or are they going to try and outplay me in that game 2, which then there's lead to them falling that trap. Aurora Veil now going up also means that it is going to be a very, very hard time breaking through these Pokemon, given how strong they are. And look at that! A Pokemon that's 4 times weak to a Heavy Slam still takes it in the red, but still taking it. And boy oh boy, I'd like to show how powerful that move is, and I do love seeing it being used. And just coming in to intimidate that Ogerpon, who we know if it does Terastallize can get those stats right. But Ninetales can just shove that off, because it can say, I'm a special attacker, I've done my job by getting screens up, it can be gone, and we can maybe see that Dondozo coming in and just having that mode activated within the first few turns, and both these Pokemon really can't deal with that sort of competition this soon in the battle.
I feel like if Lazaros had a checklist of things to do in this match to ensure victory, getting rid of Fluttermane and setting up the Aurora Veil are like the first 2 things on that list, and it feels like Lazaros is right on schedule for figuring out how to make it through this game. That Landorus does seem like it's a bit of a problem though. The Rock Slide is quite a bit of threat on that side of the field, and it might be able to just pick up 2 KOs. So we'll have to see how Lazaros positions himself. But it looks like just a double Protect to start, see what the Landorus locks itself into.
Well, Protect, safest move to really go for it in that situation, because you have all these possible spread moves coming out. Mainly that Rock Slide, which Landorus loves to carry, and we know where there's a Rock Slide, there is a way, a mantra we all say in VGC. Unfortunately, I think that's something we all say to try and keep ourselves high-spirited when we do see a Rock Slide coming along. Luckily, Laz doesn't fall into that trap though, and is able to sit around for a bit more. Again, these Pokemon are in states where they really aren't at their first potential in terms of what HP they're carrying, We do see though that they could still be useful, but the fact that he is keeping them in, Ninetales has done its job. It's just going to sit around. It can maybe throw up a Blizzard if it does avoid that Rock Slide, as a sealed it is. The switch out does come in for that Ogre though, meaning that one of the Tatsu or Dozo in the back, it is the Dondozo, who is going to come in quite comfortably, especially in front of these two Pokemon with its best buddy. The Tatsugiri is coming in, so straight away in that game one, we're seeing the combo that everyone loves and hates to see, because it can either go on forever or be done super duper quickly. To see how the players maneuver it, to see what type of gameplay we're getting in this match today.
Yeah, definitely. If the first start part of this game is any judge, we might be in for a bit of a slog. This is like quite a bit of bulk on this Dondozo. If there's anything that can take a Rock Slide fairly well, it's probably a +2 defense Dondozo in Aurora Veil. We are going to see the Cresselia switch in though. That's really interesting. Maybe allowing for some Trick Room setup to be able to handle this Dondozo later down the line.
That is going to be something that's going to be done. Yeah, we are going to see if it can handle the Dondozo. Of course, you can maybe free the Dondozo. That is a way to stop it in its tracks. That is our players praying for the inevitable, because you always want those hacks to happen, but they never happen. They always only happen to you. But Dondozo, just in its perfect position here, it can't Earthquake the Cresselia, so it is forced into going for these wave crashes. It can't really Terastallize and go for that Terra Dragon Order up, because it just opens itself up to more damage from that Cresselia carrying Ice Beam. Cresselia aren't often invested in that special attack stat, but they often do carry just enough of their base potential to make sure they can do a lot of damage with these Ice Beams and Sidekicks when they do have them. We do see a switch out though, meaning that Iron Hands can come in safely. It can take a few hits a bit better from this Dondozo as all of it goes through. Does a bit of chip damage, will get that boost, which means it's going to be steamrolling later down the line. But Trick Room comes out, and even though Dozo isn't the fastest Pokemon with that +2 in its speed, it is going to irritate a little bit, because now we have an Iron Hands in front of it who can go for a nice Wild Charge and maybe get a knockout and clear the field of this Dozo, leaving Tatsu alone in the Trick Room.
I think this is going to be a real proving ground for some of Diogo's strategies for handling this Dondozo. It's sort of perfectly set up. It's gotten an Order Up boost. It's in Aurora Veil. It's at full health. The Rock Slide happened earlier. If you blinked, you probably missed it because the leftovers brought it right back up. And it's able to protect and stall this Trick Room out for a little bit. So Wild Charge is a great option for handling this, but I don't think we know yet how much damage it will do. And I think that's a pretty crucial question, because every turn the Dondozo is still on the field, it can keep going for Order Ups, boosting that attack stat. It can protect to be able to get a lot of leftovers recovery. But it looks like Lazarus is considering some options that I wasn't expecting around this Dondozo. Looking at that Terra Dragon, even though it means the Ice Beam would do a little more damage.
Looking at that damage and maybe just trying to throw caution into the wind and thinking, what, I can see an Ice Beam coming out from this Cresselia, but maybe hoping that there isn't very much investment there, and just going for the call of Ice Beam can maybe do about 10-20% when I've got my Dragon typing. That's still enough to keep it under wraps, under control. Terastallize comes out here from the Iron Hands, taking a Water type, so it'll take any Wave Crashes better, as well as any Earthquakes out a little bit better as well. Of course, that Terastallize we did just catch our eyes on is coming out from the Dondozo, going to make it a nice, powerful Dragon type, and it's going to show that it can be a something to wreck, because it's just so powerful already. You give Stab to its signature move. It also takes these Wild Charges a lot better, and look how much that does, Hayden. It did like less than 10 damage, and we're going to see we're going for a long ride with the composition facing this Dondozo from Diogo.
Yeah, I think that Wild Charge did do more than the Rock Slide. It did 13 damage instead of 12. This Dondozo is just so well set up to be able to do so much. And I think that's the name of this game so far, is that both sides have a lot of potential for bulk. The Landorus can keep intimidating the other side, the Cresselia could Lunar Blessing back up, but eventually this Dondozo should be able to use Order Up enough to keep its attack up high, and there's just no threat of damage. The Dragon Terastallization is amazing. Sure, you're weak to the Ice Beam, but like now the best attack that the Iron Hands can do is just Drain Punch, which is almost negligible given the leftovers recovery from this Dondozo.
It is just an uphill battle here for Diogo. We've seen the damage that is coming out onto their Pokemon from this super duper boosted Dondozo, and of course the damage in return is not something that you want to be looking at, and it's just going to be a pressuring situation. You can hope for those crits, you can hope for those good rolls, you can hope Cresselia can pull through with that Ice Beam that Diogo is possibly hovering over, thinking I can go for it, I can get that freeze chance, I can get a high roll chance. Everything could be going their way, but of course Dondozo really hitting the pedal to the metal. Another Drain Punch comes out, doing that sliver of damage. I'm going to heal the sliver back as well, but that is nothing for this Order Up that's coming into its face most likely. Ice Beam coming on through, going into that Dozo. Even does a tiny bit there and isn't going to be the best thing. Order Up does come on out, no freeze whatsoever. Going to be a nice knockout there on the Iron Hands. I mean, there's one less Pokemon for this Dondozo to worry about, and one step closer to that Game 1 victory.
I think that this was a very convincing setup for Lazarus. We still have to watch the rest of this game, absolutely, because there's a way that like Rock Slide flinches and Ice Beam critical hits or freezes could totally switch this around. But Lazarus was so careful even to preserve 2 more Pokemon in the back that it feels like there are a lot of options here for being able to handle the opposing side of the field. So we'll see if Diogo's able to get something lucky and be able to pull this back. But I think really the question is going forwards, like, I think Lazarus has established. If I get rid of the Flutter Mane, if I get Aurora Veil up for my Dondozo, I have a lot of options here. And so we'll have to see if Diogo's able to push this back, or if he's just going to have to come up with a different plan for the next game.
Yeah, see what that plan is, because it is in a little bit, in this game at least, by that Protect. Rock Slide coming on through, Tatsugiri naturally going to avoid that Protect, going to be a saving grace as well. Cresselia, see what they go for. It is going to be that Ice Beam again, so just really trying to throw this damage down onto this Nally Dragon type Dondozo. He didn't come out for that leftovers, and just showing again and again, like I can't preach Dondozo enough in this game. It's one of my favourite Pokemon from this new generation. I've done so well with it myself, and it's lovely to see that players have started to pick it up again in this new Regulation E format, because it's just so good into the meta that we have around us. Rock Slide coming out does hit into the Dondozo, so this could be that turning point. If it does flinch, but it doesn't, a Wave Crash is with the way into Landorus, and that's never taking that in a million years. Laz is just steamrolling, getting that snowball going, and is probably taking this Game 1 now.
I think at this point I'm gonna take a risk as a caster and say it's a guarantee. This Dondozo can do so much. There's 3 other Pokemon after that. This Cresselia can do a lot of things, but beat 4 Pokemon is not usually one of them. So we're gonna be able to see this sealed up with the Order Up, and I'm curious to see what Diogo's gonna be thinking about now going forwards. I think that there's definitely a world where letting Aurora Veil run out and going for these Ice Beams was an option. That Rock Slide, if it had hit and flinched, might have given a chance. But mostly I'm curious to see if maybe the Flutter Mane can be preserved better to be able to threaten that Dragon Terastallization a little bit more.
Flutter Mane could be a key in this. It is going to be putting a lot of pressure down coming into this next game if we can see Diogo preserving it. It's that case though of looking at the team that Lazarus has. You have to be putting that your foot forward, because you know that if you let those Pokemon get their setup moves off, or they get the big damage themselves off, that means that Dondozo can come in nice and happy in either a protective state or a very, very reactive or proactive state. Flutter Mane does feel like the key to that though, because it can get that big damage off. Iron Hands as well, having that fake out pressure. We do see that turn 1 of this game, where it's just putting that pressure down onto the Ninetales, making sure that it is getting faked out, stopping everything that Aurora Veil turn 1, giving you that possibility to get the ball rolling again. But that comes down purely to, do you have the time and space to do it, and the resources. So the here and now obviously is this Dondozo and Cresselia, and a matchup that is normally quite a good one for Cresselia, because Cresselia is known to be those historically bulky Pokemon. But a new friend is in town, but that freeze is going to slowly stop that, because that gives Cresselia a little bit more time to chip away. So that 1v4 you said about could be changing in a mere moment.
I should know better as a caster than to say that. Even still though, it's going to be a while before this Dondozo, unless you're getting to move time, which is maybe a concern, it's going to take this Cresselia a while to knock out the Dondozo, then there's going to be 3 Pokemon left. Maybe it's possible for this Cresselia to bring it back. That would be pretty cool. But even once this Dondozo is gone, I think that this Cresselia has quite an uphill battle, especially because there's maybe a question around timing the Trick Room to be able to have enough turns to be able to knock everything out, because there is that Ogerpon in the back that can do quite a bit of damage to the Cresselia.
Yeah, Ogerpon just being that super strong Pokemon it is, could be a thorn in its side. Cresselia though does have its new signature move in that Lunar Blessing. It isn't going to heal it, to the highest degree. It isn't going to be the best tool in keeping it around forever, but it is going to make it a bit of a nuisance going on through the rest of this game. Of course, Dondozo itself is also healing up. It is going to be a nuisance, and when its Ice Beam isn't knocking out as quick as maybe Diogo wants it to be, it allowing Dondozo to get healthier and healthier, like making a higher chance of that fall. As we see just here, Order Up comes on through, and it is going to probably knock out this Cresselia, if not be close with how many boosts it has got. Puts it down to the red, as we see what Cresselia retaliates with. If it has energy in it, Ice Beam is the option, goes in, doesn't even knock out here either.
I really like the way that Diogo played the end of that game. I think it's easy to look at this and say, like, I just did, that the game is over, but I think the, sort of slim chance that Diogo was playing for made a lot of sense. Like, if that Dondozo had stayed frozen for a very long amount of time, and the Cresselia could get back up to full health, and be in Trick Room, and then knock out the Dondozo, maybe there was a world where it was able to finish off the other Pokemon. And so it was interesting to see, but definitely the odds are not in Diogo's favor, and I'm sure he wants to be able to find a higher probability way of winning that game. So I'm curious to see what his tools are. So
we'll see what our players are getting up to in this game too. It's going to be a wild one. After that dominance from Dondozo in that first game, as well as that little freeze towards the end, Laz might have a little bit of a rough time keeping the mental ready and steady. As we see, Iron Hands and Landorus, two amazing physical attackers coming out. Dondozo and Ninetales, so instantly seeing Dondozo. So now we have that option of Dondozo becoming bulky from that Aurora Veil, or from Ninetales saying goodbye to the field and bringing in Tatsugiri on turn 1, which looks really good into both of these Pokemon, given the moves we know that Dondozo is carrying in its arsenal.
Yeah, a really interesting adjustment from Lazarus to be able to have the pressure of the Dondozo that was so impactful alongside the Ninetales, to maybe give some more options to be able to set up that Aurora Veil without needing the prediction that he made in the previous game. I'm interested to see the Landorus coming out right at the start means it got one Intimidate off on the Dondozo already. That seems really helpful. And then it also means that maybe that Flutter Mane is waiting in the wings in the back, ready to actually go for some Moonblast on a Dragon-type Dondozo, or that Perish Song. And so it'll be interesting to see what ultimately Diogo is going for here, because it's harder to stop the Ninetales, but it feels like you've started some Intimidate on the Dondozo already, which is nice.
It is also always nice to get Intimidate down, meaning that once it gets its boost, it isn't at its fullest potential. Landorus is switching out though, meaning it is going to come back and forth for those Intimidates, which is going to be annoying for that Dondozo if it can't keep up the pace. Yes, you have your Order Up, but Order Up is nothing when you're having to rely on making sure that you're in parallel with the constant switching for the Intimidate. Cresselia is coming on in, which means that Trick Room mode is good to go, especially with such a slow Pokemon on the opposite of the field. Aurora Veil comes up, which means that Dondozo is be really bulky even in its base form, which is also super good if that Trick Room does go up, because Laz can then take advantage of it themselves to say, okay, I've got a super slow Pokemon in Trick Room, it's not got its boost, it is getting affected by its Intimidate as you revolve the door, but it is still allowing me to persevere and show what I can throw down in terms of that natural bulk.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the Cresselia around, but I'm very curious to see what it will be able to do. As you mentioned, this Dondozo just has so much bulk with the Aurora Veil being set up as well. We saw that it didn't quite work to set up Trick Room last time, and so I'm very curious to see what Diogo has up his sleeve this time around, because maybe if you can convince that Dondozo that the Terra Dragon is safe, and then have the Flutter Mane in the back, that's an option. But in the meantime, there's definitely not quite so much pressure from Diogo just yet, and there's a lot of opportunity for this Dondozo to go for boost, or for it to just switch out and wait for another time, while the Aurora Veil allows a lot of options for this, maybe this Ogerpon to be able to do a lot.
It is Ogerpon coming in, and it is looking to be in a nice place. It's got that spiky shield to stop the physical attackers from doing too much damage to it. And it's a nice typing for that Cresselia. Ice Beam comes on through, goes into that Ogerpon, and does so little. As well as Wild Charge coming on through as well, going into it, making sure it's hit into a grass type, meaning that Dondozo is taking nothing, and also that Ogerpon is taking nothing. Really good play there from Lazarus, because it means that you're keeping your Behemoth in the back safe. but also mean you can get Ogerpon in a really, really nice situation. With Terrestrialization still on the board, we could maybe see the activation of its secondary ability, which gives it that attack boost, which I have seen it going into things that are bulky like an Iron Hands and Cresselia, and it is still very, very close to a knockout, if not getting one, even in those instances.
I really like Lazarus' choice to work on the timing of this. That, like, it doesn't have to be Dondozo that abuses the Aurora Veil. Anything can make use of this Aurora Veil, and I think that this Ogerpon is in a spectacular position, as you mentioned, to maybe try to get some boosts, or maybe even just to draw out this Landorus and allow the Ninetales to take care of it before the Dondozo gets its boosts and tries to finish up the game.
Dondozo, look like that late game, obviously, and it is going to be nice to see if it is going to clean up the game in the end as well. Ninetales protecting as Ogerpon goes to that Swords Dance, which means it is going to be very, very threatening, even with the fact that Landorus is coming in to drop its stats. Psychic coming on out is going to do a bit more than that Ice Beam did, drop it into the yellow. Means it is going to have to be a bit shaky now because it has to rely on, okay, can I get my damage out soon enough, as well as rely maybe Ninetales can put that pressure down on Landorus. Maybe Laz can get a little bit of revenge from earlier on, holding out for Lady Luck to make sure that this Cresselia, which is doing a fair bit of damage as Psychic, is neutralized, as well as making sure that Landorus is just gone if it doesn't go for its own Terrestrialization soon before this Blizzard comes on out.
There's a lot of pressure on this Landorus for sure, but it also is in this position where it picked the right time to switch in. There was no Blizzard coming out when it switched in for that Iron Hands, and now it is in a pretty interesting position. It got the Intimidate off to negate some of that Swords Dance, and it does move first, so it could maybe even just U-turn directly back out of the field again. We are going to see it go for the Terrestrialization, though, another way to be able to navigate around Blizzard and take a little bit less damage.
Trying to work out going for that less damage, with Blizzard still is a very, very strong attack, which means that it could still put a dent into this Landorus, if not pressure it. Terrorblast goes into that Ogerpon, would be a lovely, lovely super effective attack, but doesn't make it all the way through. Luckily, not a contact move because of its effect. Doesn't get affected by the Spiky Shield, and the Trick Room does go up. Now, this Landorus is a Choice Scarf, so it is going to unfortunately be fairly slow in this environment, meaning that the Ogerpon and the Ninetales are going to be very, very happy, especially given the two things that are in front of them. Not really liking what they can dish out, especially if that Blizzard is probably going to get that Landorus when it did about 50%, and Ogerpon can clean up something if it goes to that Terrestrialization mode. If not, we could see Dondozo switching back on in to make sure that it is in a very, very safe Trick Room heavy environment.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of options to have the bulk to be able to survive that Trick Room, and in this case, to even have offense that outspeeds that Landorus now. We are going to see that Landorus switch out because it sort of needs to in this position. That was a great protect from the Ogerpon earlier, and now it's in position to just go for an Ivy Cudgel if it wants to. These Pokemon are going to be at near full health to be able to take this onslaught, but I don't think either of them wants to take a Blizzard and then a +1 attack from Ogerpon, especially with the freeze on the Iron Hands.
Freeze on the Iron Hands would have been detrimental, and it would have caused a lot of pain for Diogo. Of course, reduces the pain does come from that Horn Leech because it does so much damage and recovers so much in return, and it's just going to be very, very pressuring now. Retaliation from last game, maybe that Ninetales saying, "You froze my best friend in that Dondozo, I'm going to freeze in return." Unfortunately, it wasn't that Cresselia, so it's not very bittersweet. But as I see what comes out, that 4 comes out straight away. There is a fake opportunity going into that Ogerpon. That will be moving this turn. Luminescent comes on through to make sure both these Pokemon on the field, as bulky as they are going to be super duper healthy. Cresselia back at the very tippity top of its HP bar. Blizzard comes on out, goes into both of them. Then there is no freezes this time, luckily. So now we're back in to that neutral situation. These two bulky Pokemon in Trick Room, happy to throw down damage. And then these two, not bulky, but not, completely fragile Pokemon, that are also very fast in comparison, are sitting here, dishing up damage what they can do. Dondozo is sitting there, ready to come in, is waiting for that perfect opportunity. Doesn't seem when Laz feels that Dondozo has its time to shine in this game too.
I think there's an interesting position here that the Iron Hands is able to pick up that KO in the Ninetales with Heavy Slam now, which is pretty interesting and gives some options. But yes, the Dondozo is just waiting for the right moment to come into play, and has so many options here, especially with sitting next to an Ogerpon, it just feels like there's so much pressure with those attack boosts that Lazarus was able to get earlier. As we see it hit the field, nothing could possibly take a heavy slam better than Dondozo.
Dondozo loves taking a heavy slam. It's super heavy, it's a water type, it's got everything running for it, it's super high defense and HP stat. That Horn Leash goes on through into its fellow bulky Pokemon in the Iron Hands, still not cleaning it up, so it's really nice to see that thing on the field still. Of course, even while it's still on the field, it is just basically a sponge. It is taking these hits from the Ogerpon, allowing it to essentially heal back what it takes every turn it stays on the field. And as you see here, Trick Room has only got one turn left to go. So if we could just see Laz keep themselves safe for this one turn of Trick Room, both of these Pokemon have access to protect in some form. You can just say, you know what, protect, we're at a Trick Room. Ogerpon can get rid of his Iron Hand, which is annoying my Dozo. You can then bring in Tatsugiri down the line and make sure that you're putting this damage down as quick and simple as possible. Cresselia does go out, Main will come in, so it is going to take anything such as a order up a lot better, but it's our Protect that's going on there though, so it is just meaning it's going to be happy and safe no matter what is thrown its way. Spiky Shield as well, so just going for the bread and butter play of going for the Double Protect, wearing out that Trick Room, seeing what your opponents are going for based on what the situation is, and then see how you can adapt to that going into the secondary turns outside of the Trick Room environment.
There was a really interesting effect of this Trick Room that I wasn't expecting at all. Just making sure that there was pressure on this particular turn for the opposing side to stall out of the turn, go for the Double Protect, and then now Fluttermane got a free switch in on the exact moment where Aurora Veil wore down. I wasn't quite sure what the plan was with the Trick Room from Diogo, just going for a lot of Lunar Blessings, but the position that he's managed to find from doing so is really interesting. This Fluttermane, I think, can take its pick of either knocking out the Ogerpon or doing a good amount of damage to Dondozo, and it feels like the Dondozo's maybe in a position where it's really pressured to have the Tatsugiri come in next to it. And if it does that, but the Fluttermane goes for a Perish Song, that could be really bad for Lazarus. I really like this position. I think it's really interesting.
It is an interesting position, as you brought up there. It's one of those ones where Fluttermane can go for a fair few things and put that pressure down, and Laz is actually pressured to bring the Tatsugiri in if he wishes, instead of wanting to bring it in. We do see that the Dondozo is switching out, making sure that that presence is preserved in that Dondozo later in the game. Of course, allows maybe later down the line, if Ninetales does survive just long enough, getting a secondary Aurora Veil up in this battle. Iron Hands is the one to take leave as well as Cresselia comes on in its place. We do see that Perish Song though, and of course that is something that was maybe a very high roll call by Diogo, thinking that Tatsugiri was coming in. We do see the Ivy Sideshow, and just look how powerful this lovely little demon is. Diogopon showing why everyone wants to use it right now in their teams. Getting rid of one of the most powerful Pokemon in the format, in that Fluttermane. Yes, it means that there's that switchability for Diogo who does that Perish Song, but with nothing like that Gothitelle on the field, you aren't really putting as much pressure down, because now Laz can just switch both things out, and as a Dondozo player is looking very happy to make that double switch. You get your boosts in front of Pokemon that don't like seeing you those boosts, especially the Terra still on the board. You can now go for that Terra, that Dragon very comfortably in front of his Iron Hands.
That was such a spectacular call from Lazarus. Like, that turn could have gone so poorly. It's one of the joys of being able to see, actually, the thought process of one side of the field. We know Lazarus was about to do the play that Diogo would have punished of switching in the Tatsugiri as Diogo went for that Perish Song. That would have been beautiful. But Lazarus saw the trap and was able to come up with this other play that finishes off the Fluttermane, and now Lazarus is just in such a spectacular position. That was such an essential piece for Diogo, and once more the Fluttermane has gone down before the Dondozo hit the field. Sure, the Iron Hands can go for Fake Out, but now it's two Pokemon down, and this Cresselia is now on the Perish Song counter and can't get out of it, so it's just Cresselia and Landorus versus the world. Looks like Lazarus sealed up this game with almost everything riding on that one turn. That was so interesting. I don't think I've ever seen a game with so many turns where really it was just one turn, like 9 turns into the game, that was the crucial one.
It's one of those things you see a Dondozo, it's either you're making that break for it at the very start, or you make the break for it at the very end. And it's just that thing with your little thing you said about trapping. It seems that the Perish Trapper has become the trapped, or at least fallen into one themselves, because Laz has now really got Diogo in the palm of his hand. He's got super effective or these strong moves coming from either of the Pokemon on the field, as well as those that are sitting in the back, ready and raring to come in. Of course, I have to see what is the option here, because both these Pokemon do so good. Get towards the front of it, you probably don't even need to switch. Trick Room is probably going to be a doozy, but there is that battle cancellation. I do believe that was Diogo going for it, meaning that